Hi everyone, so I'm Leslie Gallardo and I decided to do my presentation on Hispanic American learners as I myself am Hispanic and I'm actually Mexican American, and I wanted to dive deeper into all the other races that are defined as Hispanic, not just Mexicans. So in my presentation, I decided that I would put up more statistics on the slides and then I would speak to you guys about them. So it's more of me speaking rather than just reading off of PowerPoints. And I just wanted to let you guys know before I started anything that that's basically how it goes. And thank you for listening to me. So my first slide, I kind of wanted to go over what a Hispanic American learner is and more to what a Hispanic person is, because so many people have this preconceived idea that Hispanics are just Mexicans and Mexicans are the only Hispanics there are, and that's just simply not true. As we can see in the picture off to our right, I kind of listed, or I didn't list, but I put a picture up there that listed what some other race responses can be, which these Hispanic people are and can be considered Honduran, Salvadorian, Guatemalan, Mexican, Peruvian, Bolivian, even Argentinian, Cuban. There's just so many Hispanic people out, and we can't just have one person or one race define the whole ethnicity, which doesn't do anyone good. So I just wanted to kind of go over that, because although Mexicans do make up a huge population of them, Mexicans aren't the only race that I'm going to be speaking about today. So just please keep that in mind, and let's go to the second slide. So the first thing that I kind of wanted to talk about was the economic factors. And as you can see in the first bulletin point, I point out how 6.1 million children, Latino children, are living in poverty. And this in itself has such a huge disadvantage in the sense that when students go home, they most likely don't have enough food. They go to sleep hungry, they wake up hungry, they can't eat breakfast, they eat lunch at school, maybe because of the free programs that they have. But the real thing is that these students have a low socioeconomic status, and they most likely come from immigrant families, and their resources are really, really low, and they most likely live in poor communities, and these communities are just simply not safe. Low SES correlates to lower educational achievements, and this is one of the biggest things that need to be addressed, because students who do come from this background are most likely to go to a school with low-income students as well, and since schools get their funding from property taxes, it's most likely that these schools don't have the funds to help students that need a little extra help. Language barriers is something that Hispanic Americans need to overcome, because as you can see in the statistics, approximately 11.6 million Spanish speakers are bilingual and they live in the US. And these language barriers have a total disadvantage, especially when a student comes from an immigrant family and their first generation and their first language is Spanish, because personally, my first language was Spanish, and it was really difficult for me to transition into English and going into school. Hispanics who have limited English language skills receive fewer opportunities to learn and kind of prosper, because they are so far behind with not even knowing the language, and they continue to struggle academically. And then this also goes into their personal life as well, because since they don't know the language, they can't really be social with anybody who doesn't know Spanish, and this really sets them back from the rest. Something that many people don't talk about is actually acculturation and familialism. And acculturation is the process of adopting the cultural traits or social patterns of another group. So this is when, let's say, an immigrant family comes into the US and they have a kid, and this kid is Hispanic American. And this Hispanic American child is brought up with their own culture, their own way of life, and then they get sent to school and they have to learn the American way, which can be totally hard. And this brings new challenges and experiences to the kids, because they don't know how to communicate with their teachers or their peers, because they don't know the mannerism in which to speak to them or things of that sort. Familialism, on the other hand, encourages individual family members to put the needs of the family first, even if this requires making personal sacrifice. So Latinos and Hispanics, the word is kind of interchangeable depending on how you use it, but they have a sense of family and their values, and everything is totally different from the American way in a sense, because Latinos very much value their family and everything is very family focused. So students who come from, let's say, a family like this are less likely to be involved in school. And also, Latino parents who have limited English skills appear to be less involved with their child's school, but their involvement is demonstrated in such a different way. And although it can't be seen in a school environment, it is very visible when they go home. Because even though they can't help, like, let's say, with their English homework, they're more than happy to help with their math homework, just because numbers is the same thing, and addition, subtraction, division, multiplication, all of that kind of falls under the same category, and it's pretty much universal, especially since the numbers don't really change in English or Spanish. But with that aside, it is very hard for students who come from a different culture to just come into an education in America where everything's so different from who they are, and it takes them a while to kind of adjust and assimilate. Something that many Hispanic American learners face is sadly prejudice and discrimination, and this is all while in school. So this can be really hard on the Latino children's well-being. As you can see in my first bulletin point, I mentioned how these negative and discriminatory practices go into someone's head, and this can be really bad for their mental health, because being judged or even being treated unfairly because of their language, culture, or physical features really goes into someone's heart and their mind as well. Because of everything, they have less motivation to go into school and have a positive attitude, because everyone's so rude with their comments, and this affects a student's well-being in general, and it would affect anybody's, but specifically Hispanics go through this even more than the average person because of the prejudice that people have against immigrants. It also plays into academics, because white students can be viewed as intellectually and academically superior to students of color, and this kind of messes with a colored person, specifically now speaking Hispanic person's mind, because they think they'll never be able to achieve what, let's say, a white person can achieve. These are all things that can be avoided, and that I believe as we go into the teaching field, hopefully it's not that big of a thing, because students' growth is affected in the sense that they're stunted by whatever people are saying about them, and it really goes to their head, and they can't overlook what the person next to them is saying about them. Dropout rates are also something that I really wanted to highlight, because even though Hispanic dropout rates are still the highest of any group, racial or ethnic, they are significantly lower than they started. So in 1996, as you can see, 94% of the dropouts, of high school dropouts, were Hispanic. And now in 2016, it's 10%, which is a huge achievement, because it shows how far Hispanics have came, and how this plays into becoming college educated. And as you can see in this slide, enrolling in college, Hispanics enrolling into college has significantly increased as well. A record of 3.6 million Hispanics were enrolled in public and private colleges in the US, which is up 180% from the 1.3 million who were enrolled in 1999. This also helps because it shows that Hispanics are also getting into fields that they can inspire other Hispanics in, whether it be nursing, doctors, and education, as in teaching and things like that. This presentation meant a lot to me. As I've said, I'm Mexican American and I came from a lower SES, and it just proves that where there's a will, there's a way. And thank you guys for listening to my presentation.